Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This episode is with Sam Spinelli. Sam is a doctor of physical therapy. He is somebody that I actually met like 10 years ago when he was still a student, when I was still a student. And he was creating content and talking about training and rehab and fitness and all sorts of really good stuff at that time. He's been an inspiration for me to just create content and to, go into business. We had a really great conversation about his evolution and his growth and the challenges that he's faced. We also just talked about like good training and what matters. It was just kind of a classic conversation that I like to have with people. Sam is at samspinelli.dpt on Instagram, and he's at citizenathletics.com where he owns and operates a training facility. Go check his stuff out. I really appreciate him coming on. He's a great resource. Definitely go give him some love. If you're struggling with pain, injury, or want to perform better and you want one-on-one guidance, support, and accountability to achieve your goals, please check me out. You can find me at dr.dave.strengthandkindness on Instagram. Shoot me a message anytime, and I'm here to help. Thanks so much. Peace. All right, I'm joined by Sam Spinelli. I've followed Sam for a really long time. I just informed Sam that this is going to be the 100th episode, so I'm
Woo.
honored to bring Sam on for that. I also I don't know, I didn't really expect this podcast to go anywhere. It really hasn't gone anywhere except for like to the 10 people that listen to it. But yeah, Sam, thanks so much for being here. Where I want to start with you, man, is just like how you've been like posting content and talking about physical training and rehab for like a really long time. Like, and I know a lot of people like struggle to start to talk about this, start to post about it, start to like express their opinion. But like I just want to hear like, maybe give a little bit of background about yourself too in this piece, but like what also has led you to just do the things you've been doing for the past 10 plus years?
Yeah, I started out where, I was an avid reader of different magazines, whether it was, fitness, sports, that whole realm. And then, fortunately, was, provided some reasonably good books in the fitness and performance realm. And this all happened when I was still in high school. And, at that point, I started to get a lot more interested in it. And from there, I decided that I wanted to get a personal training certification and start to explore that as an option while I was still, at the time, just wrapping up my high school year, last year of high school, and also working in the oil field here in Canada. And so then I, was very fortunate that I went and took a personal training certification from an individual named Dean Somerset, who had been a relatively, famous, infamous person in the blog sphere at the time, and was building up his name. And the first day that I met him, he just blew my mind, was teaching me stuff that I'd never heard of, a lot of stuff that like I talk about now, and he introduced much of that then. And from there, I just, found everything that he did so fascinating. He started to introduce me to a lot of different great resources like T Nation at the time, and it just expanded the whole wealth of knowledge that I had. And from that point, I just found myself talking to other individuals who were passionate about the subject. They weren't sure about it. I'd share resources to them, going back and forth. And then I went to university and found another situation just like that, where a lot of my classmates seemed to have this like big gap in knowledge. And I wanted to try to find a way to essentially, bring them resources that I thought would be of great benefit. So then I started curating a lot of information together, creating like lists of blogs, lists of newsletters, lists of different books to read, and sharing it with people who were ever interested in the topic. And I just absolutely loved everything to do with it. And when I was in my second year of university, I was encouraged by a couple of different mentors. So one was Dean Somerset, another one, his name is Barry Butt, and fantastic individuals in my growth and development as a strength coach. But then from a online creation standpoint, both of them encouraged me to start, writing down thoughts that I had and doing something with them. And at first they were just going out into like a website that doesn't exist anymore. And I just started to write down things that I thought I saw when I was working as a strength conditioning coach at that time. And it started to grow and develop. And over the next few years, it got to the point where I was then sharing a lot more information on this small, crappy website that literally I don't think anyone read. And I just really enjoyed the idea of writing and curating, and for myself, it was a great way to start to solidify ideas, because a lot of times, I'm not sure if you've been through the same thing, where maybe I know something, but when I have to actually put it together on paper or start to teach it in some way, it really solidifies the knowledge that I have around that subject. And I always just found it like so beneficial for myself, and had no intent with it to go anywhere. And over time, the people reading that website did gradually develop and grow, and I then transitioned over into some other mediums of making content, going into YouTube with a old business that I had, and then eventually into Instagram. And during that time, the network of people that I had just kept growing, and so then I had Dean and Barry, and that transitioned to other strength coaches like Tony Genocor, Brett Contreras, and they just kept, encouraging me to put more stuff out there. And that led me to then writing blogs that would be featured on their websites, going eventually onto T Nation, getting into men's health and different resources like that. And a lot of this was happening around the stage where I was going to physical therapy school. And I never really meant for it to be anything specific. It was just I would go to school and I would see something that my classmates didn't understand, usually around like more fitness and performance. And I just was like, well, how can I create something that if they read, it would hopefully fill that gap for them? And so then I would try to do that in my spare time. And it just kept cycling into where over time, more and more people were reading the stuff, and it started to get me into coaching, get me into going and speaking at different conferences, and it just kept cycling. And yeah, it's even done that to this point where I just kept gradually doing more and more of it. And at the end of the day, I'll have a handful of patients today that I'm going to see, and I talk to them and questions come up, and I just want to do something with those questions all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times, I finish my whole day, I put my kids to bed, hang out with my wife, and I sit there and I go, this is still stuck in my brain and I want to do something with it. And so then I oftentimes either make a note about it in my phone, try to come up with a post, something to address that. That way, if in the future someone said, what about this? I have a resource, something that maybe I can share, but they have the ability to access that again in the future.
Yeah. I love it. I think like the big thing that people get in their own way of doing is like they just don't take the things that are happening to them or the things that they're being exposed to every day and just utilize them and reframe them, right? And then try to teach them, to I think that's one of the hard parts. Sorry, you got little kids. I got a little boy that's just like giving us all the gunk right now. So I got a little tickle in my throat, but if I start coughing, that's what's up. But it's so much of it's just, and you've been really prolific, and I think that's another piece of it. It's just like it's okay to just be prolific and not judge it so damn near much. And I think some of it is also like if it's useful for one person, it at the beginning. I remember just I think I said this to another person. It's like you could say the exact same thing as oh gosh, what's his name? Bald guy from RP Nutrition Renaissance. Yeah. Like, you could say the same thing as him, but he is going to get so much more of an audience because he's just been doing it forever, right? And he's going to get so many more likes, XYZ. But all that matters is that, like, 5 people liked your post. Like, or like, one person read it, right? Or you can use it in an interaction. But, like, our brain doesn't love that, right? Where it's like, I only got 5 likes on this post. But it's like, yeah, but it's like, it was good information, it was thoughtful, and you learned from something from it too, right?
Yeah, I think that's the way that I try to always frame it. I've got lots of mentees, coaches, interns who have come and worked with me, and not all of them are interested in necessarily making content, but something that I do think is good for all of them to do is to make resources. And like a project that I have, I work with a local university here for kinesiology students, and when they come and do a rotation with us, all of them make some kind of resource, whether it is for them to have in the future to give to if they're interested in physical therapy, or if it's at our facility here where it's for strength and conditioning clients, for performance clients, for general fitness, or for the rehab people. I want them to make something because through that process you really start to learn and develop it. And again, ideally it's of benefit to people. Even if, they make a resource about, grunting while lifting. How many people is that going to be helpful to? I don't know. But someone's going to find benefit from it, and that makes it a useful resource. Does it need to be sent out to the whole world? Maybe not, but at least they put the effort in to create.
Yeah. Yeah. What have like I know and align with like you as a practitioner, like just the general I had Jamie Smith on my podcast. I don't know if you know Jamie Smith culture. He's very good at breaking down he's like basically you have like the movement optimism camp and you have like the movement precision camp, and like you got kind of Greg Lehman, like Bill Hartman and these and he's like they're just on a spectrum and I like I'm not really a movement precision type of person, but like Jamie also said, well like there are aspects of what when people need to be precise, it's like with really heavy loads, really high velocity things, XYZ. And honestly, like early stage rehab, you want to be pretty precise with the things. And I'm like, all right, I buy this. Like that's a cool continuum, right? And I don't think Greg Lehman would argue against that or be against what you're basically saying right there. But the movement optimism piece for me is capacity and preparation over some form of perfection on a regular basis, right? And honestly, like fitness, the thing that I'm constantly combating, I've had like 3 conversations in my inbox that are really just people expressing their frustration in the week to week variability of training in life, right? And a lot of like good coaching is just kind of helping people navigate that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And rehab. But like what are the topics that really like get you fired up? You're somebody that I would qualify as like qualify as like a truth seeker. Like you want to spread like the truth as you've seen it and as you believe, right? So, but like, what are the big things that you are trying to convey, and have they changed since you started?
Man, I look back at that old content that I have because I have stuff that's in my Google Drive from like 2012, and I look back at it sometimes because I might just be looking for a specific topic and it pops up in there, and I have drastically changed some beliefs, and other stuff hasn't mind-blowingly changed. I think that one of the biggest areas that I am constantly in pursuit of is when does something matter? Like the topic you're talking about there with like the precision versus just overall optimism. I think that I am constantly chasing that because there's times where, like if I am in the pursuit of targeting something and addressing something, like in the case of rehab, I think precision matters there. If I, for some reason, believe that someone has a distinct lateral abduction deficit and we need to address it because it's either relevant in their pain or in some movement limitation that we have, I think precision is highly relevant there. And that if they're just, flexing at the hip instead of abducting, I want to address that and dial that in to a high degree. Now, does that mean that all cases need to be done that way? No, I don't think that needs to apply in every situation. But what I'm trying to figure out is when does precision matter over just generalized training? And it's not so straightforward. I find it very challenging because there's lots of cases where I've got someone who just seems generally really deconditioned and needs to, overall improve their well-being and capacity and health and wellness. But at the same time, they might have a particular limitation that we need to address because it's highly relevant in their immediate circumstances. Like if I have a patient who is, a little bit older, post-op with a TKA or something, and they struggle in getting up and down from a chair, but bilaterally they have a extremely low knee extension strength ability, well, I think that we need to train the crap out of that. But when does that matter and where does it not? Those are things that I'm constantly reflecting upon as I have more and more patients coming through the door, more people in performance situations, because like that same concept applies. If I'm looking at someone who I'm trying to maximize their sprint, which, at the facility I have, we get high-level soccer players, high-level basketball players, high-level volleyball players, track and field, and when they come in for these things, it's like I'm not going to just say, okay, well, you just need to generally do stuff. Like I think that's a pretty crappy response. There's strong arguments to be made about addressing things that might be holding back their abilities. And you look at something like sprinting, if I have someone who is consistently having a poor ability to maintain their frontal plane stability when they land, well, I think that we need to directly address that and define benefit from it. And so then Is that every case of sprinting though? Not necessarily. So that's where I find like a lot of nuance and discussion within it, and I find it fascinating within the research where, you know, a study goes to investigate something like that. Like you look at something like individuals with rotator cuff related shoulder pain, and they go do a big external rotation training study, and they don't get better with external rotation training, and you're like, oh, that challenged my bias. So yeah, I'm trying to constantly explore that and see where it could be versus not be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like just to just reiterate like that conversation, I mean, like that I had with Jamie last week and then this one, it's like he's like just put everything on a spectrum, right? Like general training, really really specific, you know, focused XYZ. You know, there's like a ton of utility in you know, I always kind of go back to like starting strength as like damn, that is so general and like it will work, right? It will work for like the novice type of thing, right? 3x5, you warm up, you hit your 3x5, XYZ, it's awesome, right? And then like what you see though is like people get like this like cult like attitude towards it, like that. And I did this too. Like, hey,
Sure.
all you need is these like big barbell movements. And like maybe like but at some point in time most people need some form of a needs analysis on like what they are trying to do, maybe outside the gym, or you know, we just also see so much variability in response from the same type of intervention or training program. Like the external load and like what we're trying to impose on people can be very different. But the internal load, we don't know what's going on inside the black box that is a human all the time. But you have to like test, retest, right? Which is something that I am always kind of struggling with. Like I'm with you too. It's like when do we utilize stuff? But Instagram is just probably like opened my brain up and maybe not for the best of like shit, should I be doing that? Do I need to do that like with this person, or like am I missing something constantly? I don't know if you feel that, but how do you navigate that type of thinking?
No, absolutely. I think it's a highly relevant one. I see a lot of pushback from individuals about where it's like, if we just are going to be giving a general plan, does that mean that we don't necessarily need to get objective information? And I think that there's been a recent pushback against getting some objective data with various populations, and interestingly, like I am highly against that one. I don't necessarily think that everybody needs super objective information, but like you were saying, how do I know if something's working? And it could be that whatever I do makes someone better. Like if I have someone who is extremely deconditioned, they got generalized non-specific back pain, and at the end of the day, they need to walk a bit more, move a little bit, do some sort of general strength plan, and great things will happen. Do I need to do some detailed objective breakdown of that person? I don't need to. But what if it doesn't work? And then that gives me a lot more insight in that scenario. And so, like personally, I do a very detailed objective analysis with almost every single patient, almost every single client at the gym for strength and conditioning, and create like I'd say a relatively in-depth needs analysis for them, because even if they're going to get a template program, generic rehab protocol, whatever it may be, I want to be able to say, okay, when you started, you were here, we did this, everything got better, fantastic. Or if something that's relevant possibly in the future didn't, well, now we have some good insight into that. And in a lot of cases, honestly, I use that objective data to guide many of the things that I do. And I think that's where you brought up Greg. Like Greg and I seem to differ on something like that.
Yeah. I love Greg. I've Greg's been on the podcast. I don't know Greg,
Mm-hmm.
but he I think Greg's just been in it for so long, and I think I want to take a couple of his courses in person just to interact with him more, you know, but it is like that's also just the variability of like a persona online versus just like interacting with somebody in person, right? Like
Yeah.
I've had multiple people who have like reached out to Stu McGill and worked with Stu McGill, and then they've like contacted me, which is kind of wild, you know, because I'm not a leading expert on anything. And, you know, who knows who it actually is, but they're like, yeah, you know, he's super super knowledgeable and he's like a super super kind guy, right? And I'm like, yeah, like I don't doubt any of those things, right? I just some of the things that we see evidence for or against is like it's like there's a persona and there's a belief system and then there's a human being just being a compassionate human being doing what they think is best for another human, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
like we're in a human helping human industry. And I think that's what I would tell 10 years ago me. And I'm still working through this. Is like there's probably no perfect way to do things. There's principles that seem to overlap tremendously. There's evidence that is, like depending on the quality of it, that you should always be like. I think people are almost a little obsessed with like staying on top of evidence, a little bit. I
Mm.
don't know how you feel about that. Are you still involved with E3 rehab?
No.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Were you
I
involved
split
with
from it.
E3 rehab?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that doesn't matter too much. But like, I mean, I think Chris Hugan, I think I said his last name right. Like that guy does a tremendous job of like putting out good content for, especially for like young clinicians to stay on top of research and X Y Z. But like, we're almost like the new grad therapist is just like I don't know. It's like an existential. I need to know every type of thing, and I think that you get better with the experience there. But then the point I was making is like people's preferences depending on their like their sport is a preference, right? But also when you're talking about like a lot of the people I work with, you know, they have some they have some athletic pursuit, but they also have like ways of training that they like to train. And for me to be like, no, let's not do that. Let's do this thing that I say is the best. Is like it's dumb. It's just that was something that I would have at like 5 to 10 years ago been like, no, you're gonna do it my way type of thing. It doesn't help most of the time, right?
Yeah, I think that's been an adjustment to a degree that I've experienced as well, where it's like coming in a lot more cool, a lot more chill into all my interactions, whether it's with patients or clients, where I used to think that, okay, we're going to start changing your expectations, we're going to change your biases, we're going to shift over to the best style of training instantly. And now it's more like, okay, we're going to see where you're at, we're going to find what needs to maybe update if it's extremely relevant. Otherwise, I'm probably going to hopefully get you to update some biases through challenging you through different means and modems and see if that elevates the issues to either, necessity of being addressed or you just naturally address them yourself. And I think the same thing happens with training where it's like, okay, someone might need to do HSR or would benefit from doing HSRT, but at the same time, they might need to just generally train. And as long as they are cool with doing some kind of stimulus to the area, then let's do that. And if that needs to shift over to what I think is maybe the more useful and utility based option, then we can shift to that in time. But we need to start somewhere. And if that person's really far from my perspective and they're really strong in their beliefs, I'm going to get a strong backfire if I just try to force my beliefs onto them.
Yeah, yeah. What have the struggles been from the standpoint of coaching, being a clinician, operating your own business, building your own thing? Like, I mean, I talked to another guy who's a business owner. He's a PT nearby, and he's like, yeah, I went and played golf with his wife's a dentist, and he went and played golf with the owner of her practice, and he's like, the owner of the practice was like, "How you doing?" He's like, "Well, I just feel this existential dread all the time, and kind of always constantly like try my to-do list is a million miles long." And the guy's like, "Yeah, I'm about 12 years into my owning this dental practice, and I feel you there. I think it's getting better, so I'm hoping by like year 15, things are good." And I'm like, "Oh shit, right?" I'm about 5 years into running my own business and doing things my way, and there's still a lot of things I want to do, a lot of goals that I have. Um, but I mean, I will say honestly, I kind of burned myself out this spring. We had a little boy. We've basically kept taking care of a little boy. Like I parent and then I go back to work and do stuff and like, but it's challenging. And even when it's working, if you want to level up, there's always these things that you want to do, or there's the next thing, right? But how have the challenges been for you? What have been your revelations or your thoughts on that?
I came into the industry just like an absolute ball of fire. So much passion, so much energy. I'll say I fortunately was blessed with a very high work ethic. My parents are, I wouldn't say workaholics, but they work a lot. My mom is in her early 60s and still works 60 hours a week as a safety officer at a chemical plant. And, that was just induced upon me. And I look at my starts, and early on, it was like, okay, I'm going to do all the stuff that I outlined there while still going to school full time, having a full course load, while still training people. Like at the time I was talking about when I was more just early on developing stuff as a content creator, I was, in 5 to 6 courses at a time. I was still coaching 10 to 20 hours a week minimum, and just absolute passion for this stuff. And that transferred over when I got full force into working as a clinician and building businesses on the side. And it went pretty good at first, but then I'd say when my first daughter came, it was a challenge, and I fortunately didn't quite hit full burnout. But then when my second daughter came, there was the first 6 months were not the end of me, but the next 6 months when she was reaching a year, it's like I fell off hard on a lot of things. And there was like a good period where I had business changes, I had all sorts of stuff going different ways, and I really had to look at, okay, what am I doing to myself? Is this really something I can manage long term? And I have to be realistic with a lot of things. And some stuff had to change. Some business things where I had to either walk away from something. I just start saying no to more things. A lot of opportunities come, and sometimes they could be really cool, but they don't necessarily line up with the long-term vision, and that was really challenging. But at the same time, I'd also start to really look at, okay, what are the systems that I have in place to be able to do the stuff that really matters? And I did way more than I should have from behind the scenes in business, which I think is a similar problem for many people, because you start out as like a sole operator, and that's fine. But then when you start to scale up overhead, you start to scale up staff, you start to do all those things, it is incredibly unrealistic to do that. Like now I have a group of 8 people that all work for me, and to be able to, manage everything on that side of things and still do social media, still do all those multiple business ventures, I would not be able to sleep. I'd not be able to train. I can't expect that. And so then realizing I needed to have help, and within that help, also adjusting my expectation, because a challenge that I had was like getting people to come to help me, but then expecting them to be me. And I had to really, number one, I look at what I pay myself, and I couldn't necessarily pay someone the same thing. And so then the people that I was bringing on were not making the same income that I was. And why do I expect that person who has less experience, less skills, less familiarity with all these things, be able to do what I do exactly and in the same amount of time? And so like shifting my own expectations, like we talked about with patients, I had to do that. And so now I'm at like a stage where, I don't know if you've seen, like I've started to get back to posting a lot more consistently, starting to build up some more stuff between the different platforms. And a big part of that is that my team has gotten to a stage where I have been able to step away so much more from a lot of the mundane tasks that really took away from my cognitive demand and allowed me to put that into those other areas. And, it's, I'd say, a very scary thing to do, because if anyone can understand as a business owner, a lot of times the margins are not amazing. And so then to, hire someone to kind of lose money at first with it and hope it pays off, that's super hard, and was like a very challenging situation for a long time. But now seeing it develop to where, I've doubled the size of my facility, my staff is doing exceptional, my management side of things is stepping up to being able to be very successful and not necessarily need as much hands-on time from me, to where now that stuff's growing the businesses by itself, and realizing that that's what makes a real business a business. And I kind of knew that stuff, but actually putting it into effect was a hard thing for me.
I think you described stuff that like everybody who kind of starts as like a solopreneur, and like that's the thing too. Like when you're kind of doing it all yourself and you start to see success, it's like your margins are pretty good because it's just you, right? Like, but then it's like you actually build a business, you know, like, and you start to get help and you start to like expand the team and grow something. Frankly, it kind of depends on what people want, but like having an impact that's like bigger or more reaching into multiple areas. Like, yeah, you start to. I mean, I'm definitely on the end of like, I want people to, and this has been one of my trickiest things when it comes to like hiring team or whatever. I was like, I want to have people have like good jobs, like I
Mm-hmm.
want them to enjoy the job a little bit, or at least provide a resource or value. And it's like you're right, like, the expectation that I'm gonna like hire a new grad physical therapist, and this is also the thing. It's like new grad physical therapists, and I get it, it sucks. We have way too much debt for our profession. There's like a lot of things going on there, but like you come out of school and you're getting paid like X and you have this much debt. And it's like also some of these jobs suck. Like they suck.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not good jobs. Um, and it's hard because like I'm the same. I'm there with you there. I obviously haven't built what you've built, but like um, I feel the same like pressures, and I also feel like the mundane tasks that need to be offboarded are often the tasks that you're doing repetitively and you don't know how to get out of, or you don't know how to like make the standard operating procedure or find the person who will just do it for you type of thing. And you don't want to pay somebody because like it's like I'm making this much money, it feels good, and that's I'm supporting my family type of thing, right? Um, you mentioned just I think also just everybody like having kids, like there's something that it is an allostatic load that like I just didn't understand. Right? Even when it's good. Like our kids slept. We have another one on the way, and one of my biggest fears I think that was like is that the next kid's not gonna sleep. And I'm like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't worry about that until it comes, right? Um but like just like taking care of your kids or being a dad or being present, like um that's like we both know like stress is kind of in the eye of us, the behold, it's in the eye of the beholder. Like it's good, or we kind of make it bad, or we overdo stuff. But that was one of the things I didn't really understand, and like that cognitive load is tricky, and then the cognitive load of business, and then like you said, like working, being a really hard worker, that identity is tricky because when you do start to offload stuff, it like you maybe don't actually offload it, right? Like
Uh-huh.
you're like still kind of doing it, or you're holding somebody to a standard that's not realistic, or XYZ. So yeah, man, I think like it's a struggle. This is kind of the human condition though. Like we all go through these struggles like individually, and how we help each other is by sharing our experiences. But like I still have to. I can't just like learn all the lessons without kind of like screwing up and doing it myself too, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's really challenging because at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to make many of these same mistakes. Hopefully, I can learn from them, but it's going to happen. You talk about like the offloading thing. I think a prime example was I brought on someone to help me with the content side of things because I had a big drop off and feeling of essentially like I didn't have the time to do that sort of stuff anymore. I still had so much information, but the actual side of converting into public facing content had been lacking, and wanting someone to be able to help me and bringing someone onto my team finally to start doing that. And a challenge was it wasn't the standard that I wanted because I felt like I had spent at that point essentially like 12 years making content, so I have this massive advantage over the person who is now just like essentially starting off with it. And as I'm having them do stuff, I just redid everything they did because they do something and I'm like, well, I want it to be done this way. And that was like a very challenging thing for me to step back from and start to go, okay, number one, major aspect of business is speed and timing. And if I exclusively hold it to like a expectation of perfection, I'm going to constantly hold us back. And is it good enough? Is it at a point where I don't have concern about someone seeing it? Am I at a stage of where it looks still really good, but maybe I could make it a tiny bit better? It needs to go out there. And shifting that mentality and starting to be able to do that with a lot of different perspectives of my business.
Yeah, it's funny because like That's a pretty good analogy for like training too. Like, is it like good enough today? I was gonna ask you this earlier. We'll kind of cycle back around, but like, when it comes to yeah, like what we're trying to do on any given day, I think one of the things that I see and I navigate as like a coach is like as a coach like and as like an athlete like it is rare that I am not like auto regulating or making some modification to like my lifting almost every day, right? Like, I'm gonna go actually after we chat here. I'm gonna lift like pretty quick, and like I have a template. I know what I'm doing. I know kind of what my expectations are, but like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like while I'm warming up, I might do a few different things to feel good, right? And like pivot and like make it good enough
Mm-hmm.
while also not holding like to this perfect idea that I had on paper, right? Like that's kind of what a lot of things kind of boil down to is like we get the thing out on paper and it's super good in theory and it's perfect, but then like the actual implementation, there's a lot more art in it, right? There's a lot more like little tweaks and stuff like that. How do you navigate that as I don't know if you feel that same way for yourself as an athlete, for the people you work with, because this is another thing that I've just over the course of 5 years. I think 5 years ago I'd have been frustrated when somebody's like, yeah, I modified this, and this, and I don't think I would have been frustrated per se. I just want to know like what they were thinking, like what was up, and that's actually like good coaching. Like if that people are feel good about making modifications or doing X Y Z. Um, but I now it's more like yeah, good job. Like that's what I'm trying to do is like as long as it holds to we're moving in the direction of your goals, you're showing up consistently, you're challenging yourself, and you're making modifications. Like that's what we want, right? Now if it's like hey, I know this was like supposed to be like a tempo run or this was supposed to be a low, long, steady, slow state type of thing, and I just went hard as balls the whole time. It's like, all right, why did we do this type of thing, right? But like, what are your thoughts on that?
So something that I've started to do with a lot of the programs that I write, whether it's for myself, for patients, I write a theme and a description of the effort intent, and that sort of stands as a grounding principle for it because, like you said, stuff happens. There could be a necessity to modify something because, again, my own training, I might be doing an exercise and it starts to actually feel like crap. Maybe I'm having some pain with it. I experienced that recently, and so then I need to adjust it. But what was the core theme behind the intent for that day? And so then can I still stay with that theme by shifting to a different exercise, a different means of training that movement, something? Because I probably had, when I was creating the program, the theme in mind before I picked those other things. And so if I can stick with that, then it allows me to at least keep the general flow of stuff a lot better. And then within that, yeah, I'm making adjustments all the time. Like I just on Saturday, I set a national record for this exercise in strongman, where you like clean an axle bar and then press it overhead. And in the pursuit of that, it was like about 3 weeks out, I was bringing down the bar, performing multiple reps in a set, and when I brought it down, just the way that it came down, it separated my shoulder slightly. And so then from that, I was like, wow, that's not ideal. And so then I had to like really think, okay, how can I still pursue this goal? Because there's like a deadline to it. I can't just say, okay, well, I'll just, totally overhaul everything in my program and just peace out. It was like, okay, what can I manage to do that will still allow me to push that effort, still train relatively well, and align with those goals based upon the intent for that day, intent for the subsequent weeks. And so then I had to make those modifications. I did on the fly in that moment, but then in the coming days I had to adjust everything as well. And I do that with patients all the time, where it's like, I already had a patient that I'm going to see after we're done here, where he's a post-op FAI resurfacing and labral reattachment case, and he sent me a message that he went diving on the weekend and felt his hip snap, and whatever I had on the docket is going to have a big overhaul probably. But I have a theme of what I want to work on. We're going to see if we can settle things down, see if there's still some options that are on the table, or if everything needs to be changed. And so then we're going to figure it out and try to make still some forward momentum if possible. And I'm trying to always think of that with my own training, with cases, and see, because in most of the time, there is a way to still go forward. There's still a logic to what we were doing, but where do those things meet?
Yeah. I think I love the theme. Like I love the theme and the effort and the intent. You know, clarifying and conveying. It's like that is one of those things. It's like the if people can kind of grasp something like that, they can make modifications and then yeah, like what I also heard in there, and I think this is like we got like two more questions, and then I want to let you like respect your time and let you get to your patients. But like so much of it is just kind of getting better at staying calm. You know,
Mm.
like okay, this happened. What can I do to modify? What do I do to kind of keep things rolling in the right direction, right? Um, and then yeah, like playing a long game with some of this stuff, right? So give me like the wrap up here, I guess, Sam, is like yeah, give me your like themes. How do you stay composed, oriented towards the long game, and then ultimately like what are you passionate about? What keeps you motivated to keep doing the stuff you're doing?
I'll say that something I feel highly blessed about is I seem to be really capable of being chill and looking at that long game. Always able to zoom out and look at the full perspective. My daughter's over here. She's on summer break right now and doing activities, and it's interesting to hear her and my other daughter talk about that from like a trait standpoint. They've basically never seen me get upset, and um, so as much as I'd love to say, okay, this is my secret to it, I think I'm just fortunate that I seem to be a very calm, chill person, which is not necessarily the easiest thing to tell everyone to just be. But I can understand, like, when life throws you curveballs, it's easy to get really upset. But something I was blessed with being raised by is like my parents always were able to give me a good perspective of there are people in such worse situations than me, and I've always been able to kind of like look at that and reflect on it. Where at the times where I've been very frustrated with my life, I can look back and say like I chose these situations. Sure there might be things that have happened, but like when I'm frustrated by how much work I have or any of the other business related or like training tasks that are there, I chose these things, and
Yeah,
at the end of the day, I would still probably choose them. And so then like, okay, well, what can I do to figure it out? Because they're not going to magically solve themselves, and being frustrated isn't going to probably help that situation. Just like when someone's in pain, catastrophization doesn't help their situation.
yeah,
We don't have the ability to know what the future holds for us. And so a lot of times when I'm like in the cases of patients, it's like you're anxious, you're upset. Let's have a realistic look at, does that align with, you know, the objective information we have at our hands, the evidence of the outcomes that we know that can happen. Because like with that patient who's going to come in today, I'm sure he's anxious. He sent me an email being very worried about it. Now, is it going to change his long-term outcomes? Probably not. And we're going to need to have a discussion to figure out the solutions to that. But even if it does, being upset and angry about it is not going to help either. And so then, like, what can we do to reframe, look at what we have control over, figure out what's within our internal locus of control, address those things to the best degree possible, focus on that, and try to like facilitate the best self-efficacy that we can, because that's at the end of the day our best case scenario. And then as far as like, what was the second part of that?
just like what's exciting you now. I mean, like staying calm and composed, but also like yeah, like what are you looking forward to in the future, or
um,
what keeps you going type of stuff.
yeah, honestly, I just like love this stuff so much. I feel like there's just still a overwhelming gap of not enough education out there. But then finding a way to educate the public to where it resonates and is interesting, because whether it's about the fitness side or the rehab side, every time I meet someone new, they have no idea about the stuff that's in my head, the stuff that I think that they should know. And I'm like, well, how has this not reached you yet? This is insane to me. But that just keeps, solidifying that there is more work to be done. Why has this stuff not gone to you? So then how can I get it to you?
Yeah,
So then, yeah, I find like the idea of that really fascinating. As much as you were talking about, the constant new evolution of research that's out there, I try to stay on top of it. I think it's sometimes relevant, a lot of times not necessarily big changes. Most of the time, honestly, not. But on the flip side, I'm currently a lot more pursuant of, okay, how can I create better education, which is what I think of like my content as, to get people to see it, to get people to resonate with it, and for it to make some meaningful change. And yeah, that's where I'm really trying to figure that out all the time. I honestly spend a lot of time speaking now to people who are in different realms of education or content creation, and like picking their brains about that sort of stuff, because if there's an area where I see someone's been super successful in that, like not within our niche, well, what can I take from that person to be able to put that into our field? And so yeah, I'm trying to constantly figure that out, figure out a way to build that into my systems, and then hopefully, keep transferring it over into better and better stuff in the long term.
Yeah. Sam, thank you so much for your time. I know you got a patient coming. Where do people find you?
Best options, you can check me out on Instagram. You can check out the Citizen Athletics YouTube channel. I'll be having more stuff in the rehab stuff coming hopefully soon, so there'll be lots of great options there. And that's sort of the main options.
All right. Yeah, it's Sam Spinelli, DPT. Hold on. Yeah, it's samspinelli.dpt on Instagram, and then citizenathletics.com. I'll link those in the show notes. Sam, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate you, man. Keep on doing what you're doing. It's good stuff.
Thanks for having me on.
Peace, everybody.